What is up, everybody? Welcome into a very special Hometown Ghost Stories horror movie review. I am your host, Rob Coakley, joined this week only by Dave Wilkins.
That's the way it should be. It's the way it was originally meant to be.
This is the way it started. This is the way it will end. um, but Jesse could not join us because we were able to do something special last night, Dave and myself. We were able, thanks to the kind folks at the Brattle Theater in Cambridge, Massachusetts, go and see Nosferatu a week early, which was really cool of them to reach out and let us do that. I was excited because I wanted to see this movie in the first place, but what a really cool experience.
I loved the theater.
Yeah.
It had kind of like an old school feel to it. It wasn't the seats weren't on like an incline where they go up. They were all flat, so it was kind of like everyone felt kind of like packed in and cozy. This probably sounds horrible, but I liked the experience. It was really neat, and the theater's great.
Yeah, it was a real throwback experience. What I will say about it before we jump into the movie is it was really cool to go to a movie where they don't allow you to have your cell phone out, like you will
Mhm.
get thrown out of the theater. So that was really cool that like you had to sit there and pay attention to the movie, and everyone that was there to see the movie anyway. So everyone was really engaged. So shout out to the Brattle Theater. They're a nonprofit. You can go see movies there almost every day of the week if you're around Cambridge, Massachusetts. Highly suggest stopping in and catching a movie if you're able to.
For sure.
Yeah. But Dave, we saw Nosferatu. We saw it a week early. So the way we're doing this, we're going to give our relatively vague review, just our overall thought concepts on the movie, and then we will let you know when we're going to start spoiling it. So no spoilers in the beginning. We'll give you the point where we're going to spoil it. Before we get into it, though, Dave, I need a synopsis for Atu.
You got it. Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers. In the 1830s, estate agent Thomas Hutter travels to Transylvania for a fateful meeting with Count Orlok, a prospective client. In his absence, Hutter's new bride, Ellen, is left under the care of her friends, Friedrich and Anna Harding. Plagued by horrific visions and an increasing sense of dread, Ellen soon encounters an evil force that's far beyond her control. Now, this movie is new, but it's also 102 years old.
Yeah.
We're not going to spoil it. However, this movie has been around. The story has been around for 120 something years, 125 years or whatever it is. So it's the story's out there. And this didn't stray too much from the original. You have some Nosferatu, some Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is technically the same story. And it kind of just stays true to the original story. And I thought it was redone very well, kept very true to the original. You had that same kind of creepy vibe. It's just a chilling story with no underlying hidden messages, no Jungian hero archetypes, just raw horror with a touch of gothic romance. I thought this movie was brilliantly shot. I thought it was fantastically acted, quality jump scares. The jump scares got me almost every single time, and they weren't cheap. Every single one of them was earned. And there's just this lingering feeling of dread and anxiety throughout the entire movie that I thought was perfectly captured by the director and the actors.
And the director, Robert Eggers, I think he's one of the best at doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every movie I can think of that I've seen of his, he manages to make you get on the edge of your seat without doing much. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like you said, this sense of dread throughout his movies. And God, the set designs, the light, like I'm looking at the lighting in this movie, the camera shots. It's a beautiful movie all around. Like everything is just so good. Like
So good.
just the every shot set of I'm like, man, like nothing's ever wasted, it feels like in this movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like everything, not that everything's not purposeful in most movies, but I feel like there wasn't a shot where I'm like, they just kind of filmed that scene. It's like every angle meant something. It felt like every shot, the lighting, the color in this movie is very important per every scene. It's just, it was really good. It was so well shot. The
Yeah.
acting was great too, as you brought up. Everyone played their roles really well. I have no complaints about any of the acting in this movie. Uh,
Just going back to the way it was shot real quick, I was a
mhm,
huge fan of the way the camera kind of just floated around the set, almost like you almost had like a it wasn't a POV shot, but it almost like felt like you were watching not as as a viewer, but as somebody in the room. And it just had such a like an eerie way of the camera moving, how it would just kind of flow from room to room like you're floating. I thought that was really, really well done.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because there was a point that I was thinking last night during a particular scene. I was watching it and it's just dialogue between 2 characters, and 99% of other movies would have been doing cuts back and forth, and this movie
Hmm.
does that here and there. But this one particular scene, and they did this a few times, it was just a moving cam, sort of like a slowly moving camera, and it wasn't cutting too fast, so, like, it held my attention more
Hmm.
because it was just sitting there and you're just swaying a little bit, almost like you're leaning into the conversation as they're having it. So glad you brought that up because I remember because I couldn't take notes last night as we're doing this. Had to take
Right.
mental notes, and that was
I
one of the
know.
ones that I did take down. And I would have forgot if you didn't bring that up. So yeah, I think stuff like that, just not breaking shots for no reason, is very key in this movie. I just loved all of that.
Yeah, and it's tough to pull off too. It's not like, you talk about some like the great movie shots or even in TV shows where you have like a continuous moving camera and it's if it's well done, it's really cool. And if it's not well done, it's just nauseating and infuriating.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's easier to screw up than it is to nail, and this movie nailed it.
Yeah, they and no scene, although it would stay on them, nothing ever overstayed its welcome either. And just God, some of the scenes, man, just the tension building throughout this. You're just building tension. Can't remember a movie that just built tension with almost every scene
Oh man. The
throughout the
whole
entire movie like this one.
Yeah, the whole atmosphere throughout the entire movie was just you're just scared. It's a scary movie. It's a
Yeah.
legitimately scary movie. And the original from 1922 was a legitimately scary movie. If you ever gone back and watched that, it's actually really cool. Rob, you and I do this occasionally. We'll just throw on like one of the old silent horror movies just to watch them and appreciate the it's like a whole different genre of horror. And they are still scary and unsettling, even though there's no real dialogue or anything to go off of, which is almost more impressive in a way
Yeah.
that they were able to pull stuff off like that with having so little to work with. But the original Nosferatu is a terrifying movie. This I feel like just did it so much justice.
Yeah. The one I'm thinking of when you bring that up is we watched The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, I think is
Yep.
what it's called, a couple years back.
Yep.
And another movie that was 100 years old when we watched it, so I think it's over 100 years old now,
Yep.
and, just things that they did to get by in those times was really cool, so we won't get too much into that. Maybe we'll do a bonus review of that in the future and rewatch it because
That's a fun idea.
it was a scary movie. But the other thing I wanna talk about is the music is great in the movie, but
Mhm.
the sound design overall,
Yeah.
I was trying to think of another horror movie, like, there's been plenty that have used sound effectively, but this movie in particular, every noise, your stomach's turning almost to every single noise that you hear. It's just so good that just out of nowhere, you'll hear this creak or this groan, and it
Mhm.
could just mean nothing, but the atmosphere around it just makes you go, "Ugh,
Yeah.
what is coming behind that creak or that groan?" So I think that when you watch this movie, really pay attention to the sound. Really focus when you're watching this movie because you'll feel that dread
Mhm.
building from from the shots that they'd made, from the sound, from just about everything in this movie.
Yeah, the sound design was brilliant. One thing in particular I loved about the sound design was Nosferatu's voice. Every time he talked, it was just booming, and it felt like, especially in the movie theater with really good sound, it just sounds
Yeah,
like his voice is coming from all around you. And it's like it sounds like he's in the theater with you. And it was so unsettling every
yeah.
time he opens his mouth. I have one negative about this movie that I want to talk about right now because it's kind of adds together with what I'm talking about is the movie takes place in Germany for the most part, and everyone speaks with an English accent. That annoyed the shit out of me. It didn't feel right. It didn't. I don't think I'll take any points off for it, but it's just if everyone had a German accent, I think that would have been more authentic. It would have felt a little bit more real. But what I will say is at least Nosferatu had the traditional Romanian accent. Thank God, because it
Yeah.
was perfect and it was terrifying.
Yeah, well, I think that was a good way for them. I don't disagree with you, by the way. I wouldn't have picked up on it. I wouldn't have thought about that aspect. But I think one reason they might have done it is to differentiate his voice from everybody else because he was from a faraway land.
Yeah,
Eh,
I don't think I mean the German accent is pretty distinguishable from a Romanian
I
accent.
mean, that's fair as well. I mean, I don't know. I understand the thought.
Mm,
It didn't bother me quite as much as you. I don't know if I want to give my main negative. I will, I guess, maybe when we get into spoilers. I told you it last night,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
when we get
Save
into
that one for spoilers.
yeah, I'll save that one for spoilers. But yeah, I can see that. But I think at least they all were using the same accent
Right.
rather than mishmashing it around and doing
Yeah.
like all different stuff. At least it was consistent. And then the one who didn't really have that much of an accent that should have been a Swiss accent was Willem Dafoe, but he was still amazing in this
Oh
movie.
yeah, he's played Van Helsing. Although his character had a different name, but that character was Van Helsing. He
Correct.
was what a brilliant performance by Willem Dafoe. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
right? Willem Dafoe is one of the great actors of our time, but he just delivered that performance flawlessly. What a perfect character. Really well
Yeah.
written too. I feel like he was so knowledgeable about what needed to be done, but was bad at articulating what he wanted to do. So no one ever really knew what the heck he was talking about or what he was doing. I thought that was a pretty funny, kind of an interesting angle.
Yeah. He was a great character. I do think everyone in this movie was good from top to bottom for the most part. Like there's no one that I would have been like, I wish someone else played this part.
Yeah.
I thought they were all great. I thought that they showed the dread. I mean,
Mhm.
give Nicholas Holt a ton of credit as well
Yeah.
because there's a lot of parts where he has to act alone and he just crushes it.
Yeah.
He helps you feel what he's feeling for sure, which is what the role of an actor is, you know,
Yep.
acting 101. But
Yeah.
there's some parts that he did a really good job. I enjoyed his performance.
Top tier performance from Lily Rose Depp. I thought she
Mhm.
absolutely drove this home. I thought she was the backbone of the movie. I thought, and she did a lot of her own. There was a lot of what do you call it when you're bent contortion stuff with
Mhm.
her, and she did it all herself. There were no stunt doubles or anything like that. So phenomenal performance from her, and Bill Skarsgård. What an amazing performance from him too. Because if you sat me down in front of this movie and didn't tell me who was in it, you could have given me 100 guesses, and I never would have guessed that Bill Skarsgård was playing Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Just never would have guessed, and it was a great performance.
Yeah, he absolutely crushed that as well. Just really good movie, man. I think is there anything else you want to get into before we hit the spoiler point?
I guess I liked the so in the traditional movie, there was a lot that was they had to do because it was 1922 and that worked for 1922. And what was cool about this movie is they used a lot of those things from the 1922 version and incorporated it in this 2024 version. And they didn't like try and do it bigger and better. For instance, that hand shadow that creeps along that was big in the original movie. They did a lot of that in this movie, and I thought it was very well executed. I thought it was a great throwback to the original. It made it feel like the original, which I think is important when you're doing a remake. I thought it was a really nice blend of old and new.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where they didn't try to reinvent the wheel too much. It's like they made it a little more modern in terms of just the technical tricks they could use and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
they were able to modernize it in that respect while it kind of keeps the soul of the original and helps to update for a modern audience is the way I would put it. And I think sometimes people try to put their own stamp on things too much
Mhm.
and they over course correct.
Yep.
And not that this doesn't have its own feel, but but it doesn't go overboard with anything.
Yeah, I
It,
thought
it,
Werner Herzog's movie from the '70s, the remake, I thought that was him trying to put too much of his own spin on it, and I think it doesn't hold up to the original or this one.
hmm. I don't know if I've watched the one from the 70s. If I have, it's been a really long time, so I can't comment on that. But maybe I will go back and watch that now just to
Hmm.
sort of see the differences there, because it'll be a fun little exercise.
I think you won't like it. That's what I project, and I think that you won't like it because they do the thing that you don't like that when they do. They
Oh
do the
yeah.
thing where they take a perfectly good villain and they're like, "Here's why he's a villain."
Oh no.
So,
I
yeah.
mean, like, it's fine for some characters, but some you just don't need it.
Mhm.
And I don't need it for, Nosferatu or Dracula. Like, we understand what the character is, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need a big long backstory on the who, what, when, where, why on characters like that, but people have heard that before. Shall we get into the spoilers now?
Sure. Here's your fair warning. If you have been around for 102 years and are unfamiliar with the story, we are now going to spoil it and tell you all of our true thoughts on this 2024 remake of the 1922 classic Nosferatu. So,
I
without
mean,
further ado,
all the thoughts I gave out were true thoughts, but now we're just going to
yeah,
dive a
no.
little deeper.
To be fair, yes, we weren't lying.
We're like, yeah, all right, now no one's listening. Now we can shit on this movie.
This movie sucked.
No, no, this movie was great. There's some stuff in this movie that I want to get into, some of that contortion stuff,
Mhm.
because it makes The Exorcist sort of look like play school.
Yeah, some of it for sure. This movie is interesting in how they went with it. Now it's not a shot for shot remake of Nosferatu or Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's like a hybrid of the both.
Mhm.
And it's also kind of like a zombie movie because the vampire Nosferatu is I feel like he's more like a zombie than he is like a vampire in this in some ways. In other ways, he is obviously a classical vampire. And then it's also kind of like a demonic possession movie. So you got like zombie, vampire, demonic possession all mixed into one, which sounds like a disaster, but it was actually really well executed.
Yeah, I know what you're saying there. And almost I guess, like, one thing they should have done is, because I think he's malnourished, right? Like,
Mhm.
for a vampire, and that's why he has some of the look that he has. He's not like fully formed or something, is the way I was interpreting it, because he was talking about kind of being reawakened,
Mhm.
and I just don't think he's fed enough at this point, and that's why he has some of that look. I don't know how you would explain it more, and I guess it really doesn't need to be, but I think that's a good point that you're bringing up.
Yeah, and it's kinda so in Bram Stoker's Dracula, he kind of goes through different phases depending on how where he's at and how he needs to be fed, and that's kind of where the Renfield character comes into this, who was also in this movie under a different name. So just if people don't know like where like the ties together with Nosferatu and Bram Stoker's Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula was a book from the late 1800s, and it was first made into a movie in 1922 called Nosferatu, which was basically like this unlicensed movie based on Bram Stoker's Dracula book. And they basically didn't get permission to make it, but they did it anyway. So
Yeah.
you got like all these characters that have different names. You have Nosferatu as Dracula and Renfield as whoever and whatnot. So basically, it's the same story, just you know,
Yeah, they
ripped
got Bud
off.
Nod. They got
Yeah,
Bud Nod. They were like, "No, you can't put our name on it." And they're like, "Oh, well, I guess this
guess
name is
what?
this." Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah, that's how Nosferatu originally. It's a cool name though.
it is.
It is cool. Sounds great. Creepy. Dracula is also a great word. But yeah, the story is essentially the same story, right?
Mhm.
With a few twists here and there, but you're getting the same like broad strokes of the story. And we've seen this story told so many times, and a lot of times it's told well. I'm a big, vampire fan. I like vampire movies. I enjoy most of them, some more than others for sure,
Oh
but
man,
there's some really bad ones as well.
The spectrum of vampire movies is the widest subgenre in horror. It
Yeah,
is the widest, from dog shit to masterpiece,
yeah,
from Twilight to Bram Stoker.
yeah, yeah. It can run the gamut for
Yeah.
sure. But this one nails the original story, and God, it's so good. Some of the scenes where Nicholas Holt's character is running through the castle when he's sort of trapped in there, trying to escape. He goes to visit Nosferatu because he's basically selling him a house. He's like a traveling real estate agent, because it's different time, and they didn't have the sites you go to check out the house. He has to like bring him a picture of it, like a drawn picture of it,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this is the house you're buying. Like you're not going to see it first, so here's your Remax or whatever, you know.
I like when
Um,
he's meeting with Nosferatu or Captain Orlok in his castle in Transylvania, and he signs the contract, and Count Orlok just goes, "Good, now we are neighbors." That was a great line.
it was so good, but then he sort of holds him capture, and he's trying to get through this castle, and that's one of the scenes where I was talking about. You're just with him mostly,
Mhm.
and the amount of dread you feel for him trying to work his way through this castle. He sells it so well. It's because the castle's empty. Like for the most part, there's nothing in this castle. So, and it's by itself. He like had to climb a mountain to get there for the most
Yep.
part. Like it's the isolation angle
Mhm.
of it, being trapped with this creature
Even
that
when he's going to the castle and the carriage comes to pick him up, the carriage is completely empty, just horse drawn with nobody else in it. And he gets in it and it takes him there. So yeah, isolation is a great point.
yeah. So you just feel that sense of isolation with him in that point, and you almost feel like that isolation with a lot of characters in this. With Lily Rose Depp's character, she feels isolated against everybody else because she knows what's happening,
Yep.
and nobody really believes her until Willem Dafoe, shows up and Nicholas Holt returns. It is chilling. And to the other thing you brought up, when they do a jump scare or they do a scene that's meant to scare you, it scares the absolute
Yeah.
shit out of you.
Yeah. He'll
It,
jump out of your skin, even when you see it coming. Some of them you're like, here it comes, and then it
yeah.
comes, and you're like, ah.
And you're still like, oh, and it's like
Yeah.
a gut punch every time because
Every time.
a lot of horror movies you're like watching with glee, you're like, all right, I hope Jason goes kills this guy, right?
Yep.
This one you're like, man, just leave him alone.
Yeah.
Just leave everyone alone, please. It gives you that sense, and I love when movies. I mean, I like all the spectrum of horror movies,
Mhm.
but when you get a movie like this where you are actually rooting for everyone in the movie,
Yep.
we didn't have to manufacture anyone that was like an antagonist person
Mhm.
as well. The
Right.
antagonist was the horror,
Yep.
the monster.
Mhm.
I like that because you do get attached to all the other characters and you're rooting for them, even though going in,
That's a good point.
everyone can't make it, man. They
Yeah.
can't all make it, but I really want them to.
Mhm. That's true. And there's a couple of scenes of people who didn't make it that we were like, no. A
Yeah,
couple of them were like, oh,
yeah,
brutal. But this
not
was
great.
this was such a good movie, and it was absolutely just truly horrifying movie.
Yeah,
Really true horror,
I'm gonna
which
give a good.
I said, which you don't always get.
Right. Yeah, you don't. This is a good one. This is top 3 for me of 2024.
Yeah, I'd have to think
For
about it, but I think it might be
I think it's
for me too.
easy. It's easily it might be number 1. I maybe we should do a top 3 list. I'm gonna give my one negative on the movie.
All right, hit me.
I told you this last night as we were walking out of the theater. My one negative. Now, the character is still terrifying looking,
For
but
sure.
when you see Nosferatu, he just looks a little too much like Jim Carrey from the Sonic movies. And I'm just like,
That is
such
such
a
a good, like, you absolutely nailed that, because this whole movie, and again, not to take anything away from this creature design, because it was absolutely terrifying, but the whole time I'm like, he looks like someone. who the fuck does he look like? I can't put my finger on it. He looks like someone. And when he told me that, I was like, oh, that's it. That's absolutely it. That is what I had in my head. That character, I was like, who the hell is that? Like, why is this like, well, he looks like that guy, but I can't think of who it is. And you were like, yep.
Yeah, Professor Eggman or something like that
Something
from
like
the
that.
Sonic movies. I was
Like,
just
oh
like,
shit.
I
That's
was like,
him.
it just took a little, like not enough that it took me out of the movie,
Mhm.
but I did think it a few times when he was on screen. I was just like, man, he looks way too much like Jim Carrey's Professor Eggman. But
Yeah.
the scary version,
Yeah. Oh,
the
for sure.
absolute,
No, not like I said, not take anything away from the absolute terror of this creature, but yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Still terrifying creature. I wish he didn't have a mustache. I don't want Dracula to have a mustache. It's weird.
yeah. It the mustache thing's weird because like what's regenerating on him? Like how is I don't know, like because he's supposed to be coming out of decay basically,
Yeah.
and he just has a mustache. I feel like that's the one thing that I really like about the original Nosferatu is how he basically has no hair
Yeah.
on him, and I feel like that'd be more accurate
He
of
looks more like a corpse.
right.
We compare him against like the Bela Lugosi Dracula, who has like a perfectly sculpted head of hair.
Yeah, which is fun too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that the mustache is a little too over the top. I get why they did it just based on like the region he came from and stuff.
Hmm.
The time, I don't know. Like it's fun, like it's okay, but I'm with you. I think I'd prefer him without the mustache
Hmm.
myself.
I think maybe Vlad the Impaler had a mustache. Maybe that's
He
what it
did.
was.
He
Yeah.
did. Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts before we give a score on this?
Not really to add to what I've already said, but maybe just to recap. I thought this movie was a perfect horror movie. Absolutely scary, terrifying atmosphere. They're not trying to ram any messages down your throat, which is, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But this one, they didn't have to. You're just getting a true horror story and one of the most classic horror stories and one of the best horror stories ever written. And in a well executed modern movie, I thought it was fantastic.
I think this movie just starts off on the right pacing. You get a scene that just gets you on your back foot immediately
Hmm.
as soon as it kicks off. They do a really good job mixing in some black and white scenes in this movie as well.
Yeah.
I really like that. I
It
like
started off with a black and white scene. I thought the whole movie was going to be black and white, and I was fine with it.
yeah, I would have been fine with it as well, but I'm actually glad they didn't
Me too.
because of their use of lighting and color in this movie
Hmm.
is some of the most effective I've ever seen. And again, it's Robert Eggers and all of his movies kind of have that idea, although he did The Lighthouse in black and white.
True.
So, but that worked for that setting, right? Like
Yeah,
it's just great job by him on that as well.
absolutely.
I do like his directing, and I know that's the other thing I will say. If you are looking for something fast-paced action, like a really fast-paced movie, that's not what this is, and I personally don't think that's what it should ever be.
No, I agree.
This is a bit of a slow burn, but you're gonna feel like you're gonna feel the sense of dread throughout the whole thing.
Mhm.
But if you don't like movies that take a little bit to develop, this might not be for you.
I don't know if I could say this is a slow-paced movie.
Well, yeah, you know
It's
what
I
I
mean,
mean, though.
you're gonna be gripped the entire time, and you're
Yeah,
gonna be on the edge of your seat, and you're gonna be scared out of your mind.
yeah,
So,
you're not getting vampire in your face the entire time, is what I'm saying.
true.
And I know that's what some people want. They just want to go into the movie, they just want vampire, whatever. You don't get that, but you are on the edge of your seat for pretty much the whole movie because you never know. You
Mhm.
never know what's coming. So, well, I mean, we know the story, but this particular version, they do a good job mixing things in.
Yeah.
Let's jump into some scores.
Okay. I have this at a 5. I have no reason not to. I can't do and I feel like such a I'm just like a 5 dispenser this year in 20 I have so many 5-star movies. Like I think I have more in 2024 than I have in any other year that we've been doing this. But I don't have any reason not to give it a 5. I loved it. And I think a lot of credit to the theater experience. I think that anytime you
Yeah.
watch a movie in a theater, you're getting that amazing sound the way it's intended. You're getting the visuals the way it's intended on the big screen, and it's just going to elevate any movie probably a full star if it's good. If it's bad, it actually might be worse. But yeah, I think that when you put everything together, I have no reason to give this anything shy of a 5.
I'm also at a 5, and to that theater experience, also very cool to be in the one we were in, the really
Yeah.
old school theater.
Mhm.
It really helped the atmosphere there
Yep.
as well. So I have it at a 5. I have no other complaints. You've heard my little. I mean, I have nothing to else to like say. Like, I wish they did this. I wish they did that.
Yeah.
You know how I usually I'm like, well, if they did this a little bit, I like
I have
what?
nothing.
Like,
I
what
don't
could they have
wish
done different?
I don't wish they did anything differently. I think it was
No.
just a perfect movie.
And I
And
think if I revisit this in a year or 5 years, I'll feel the same way.
yeah.
I don't think anything will change about that. So, like, this is definitely top 3 for me this year. I think it's top 2, and it's probably number 1.
Mhm. That's cool.
If I had to rattle them off right now,
Do
it
it.
would be Nosferatu, Heretic, and Late Night with the Devil, I believe would be my top 3 for
Mhm.
this year so far. I mean, we got another I mean, this is pretty much the end of the year. So
Yeah, this might be
I
our last review of the year, right?
yeah, so I think those are my top 3, but I'd have to sit back and just really remember what we've seen and what I've seen, because we didn't even review Heretic, but I really enjoyed it.
Right. I haven't seen Heretic yet, but it's on my to watch list. If I had to rattle off 3 in no particular order, it's probably this, Alien Romulus, and The Substance.
Substance is good too.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Alien Romulus, bad ending.
I know how
Not
you
a
feel.
not a
But let's
bad
not
ending here.
can't spoil that movie in this review. So
Yeah. Well, we
If
are
you want-
very excited that we got to see this early. Big shout out to the Brattle Theater again. This is coming out on Christmas Day, so our review is a week early. Hope this makes some of you go see this movie. You should definitely go see it.
see it
Just
in theater.
yeah, on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
It's technically a Christmas movie.
That's a Christmas movie.
Technically a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
You know, it happens.
My top 3 favorite Christmas movies of all time: Nosferatu, Terrifier 3, and Die Hard.
I'm close on that list. I'd have to throw the Muppet Christmas Carol in though as well,
Oh, fine.
because it's a go-to every year.
But
Anyways,
that's an actual Christmas movie. I was trying to pick non-Christmas movies.
I know. Well, those are Christmas movies.
Non-Christmas Christmas movies.
We'll have this discussion at some other point because
Yeah.
people are going to want to weigh in. We'll do that in the future. When you do get to see this movie, please jump in Discord, leave a comment below. Let us know what you thought of Nosferatu. We'll catch you next time. I'm Rob. That's Dave. Peace.